Ladies and gentlemen, dear EU officials, partners, colleagues, and bicycle friends, welcome to Cycling Industries Europe's Summit 2021. I am Tony Grimaldi, President of CIE and CEO of Cycle Europe, a group of companies with bicycle companies with European bicycle brands. I am glad to welcome you and open this online event. And I am delighted to inform you that we have more than 950 registrations today. Fantastic. Last year, we had really been going through a challenging situation due to the uncertainty of COVID-19. In this situation, I'm very proud to see how CIE, together with the bicycle industry, and members have actually come together for European green recovery and growth. We are leading the way in sustainable mobility, new green jobs, digitalization, and climate targets. We have an interesting program today with keynote speakers representing political leadership, research, European Commission, and advocacy. The plan was also that we should have had Vice President of the European Commission, Frans Timmermans, with us. But unfortunately, he could not join. But we accepted that he today actually is together with United Nations, together with some prime ministers and state leaders, to actually represent the importance of cycling. After the keynote speakers today, we will have some panels and interesting discussions. And we will, with more than 900 participants in this webinar and session, we will and want everybody to be active and interactive in this event. We will have possibility, all of you has possibility to chat, and there is also a Q&A box where you can come in with questions that you want to address. And we have many interesting speakers, so I'm so sure we can have some interesting exchanges today. I'm really, really looking forward to this event. Portugal currently holds the presidency of EU, which means that Portuguese government is taking a leading role in steering the whole group of EU member states through its legislative and policy agendas. For us, this is vitally important because in front, the EU has a recovery plans where every country where cycling should be represented in order to reach the EU Green Deal targets. This is also good timing for our industries because Portugal is undoubtedly one of the European champions of the cycling industries. Recently, taking over the #1 spot in number of bikes produced per year and building a thriving economy in manufacturing and cycling. Very exciting. Unfortunately, Minister Pedro Cisa Vieira was called away today at very short notice into a cabinet event in Portugal. But I'm pleased to welcome João Torres, I hope the pronunciation was okay, Commerce and Service Secretary of State, who has stepped in to deliver Minister Vieira's opening keynote on how Portugal is taking the lead on cycling in EU. I'm looking forward to this speech. Please, João Torres.
So thank you very much. I would like to thank the organization for the invitation, which was addressed to the Ministry of State, Economy and Digital Transition. But on behalf of him, I would like to greet Mr. Tony Grimaldi and congratulate him on the organization of the discussion we are having here today. And it is of the utmost importance. First and foremost, I would like to share my perspective on when where Portugal stands today when it comes to the cycling industry. Last year, uh, as um, uh, uh, as Mr. Tony Grimaldi noticed and mentioned before, Portugal has once again broken its own record for bicycle exports. This has happened in a year, as we all know, of exceptional circumstances due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2020 alone, exports of the cycling industry accrued for more than 424 million euros, an increase of 5% compared to 2019. In fact, 2019 was the year in which Portugal became the largest European producer of bikes with about 2.7 million units produced. These figures are due to the approximately 8,000 workers in this sector, which has more than 9 dozen companies with skills and experience in technologies applicable to two-wheelers and other smooth modes. However, the growth achieved by the sector was not in spite of the pandemic, but precisely because of it. And this is a very important point. Consumer habits have shifted throughout the year 2020 as the practice of indoor sports has been limited or otherwise forbidden due to the ease of spread of this pandemic. The result has been an increase in the usage of bicycles as a means of transportation, since it's both an effective alternative for either sports or crowded public transportation. These numbers also reflect the efforts made, especially in recent years, in the Industry 4.0. The bicycle production industry has grown steadily through the use of new technologies and further value creation. This, of course, is a result of the inventiveness of the companies operating in the sector and their workforce. From a public policy standpoint, the Portuguese government has made notable efforts to foster growth and enthusiasm for Industry 4.0 and further incentivizing companies to grow in smart, sustainable, and data-driven ways. These policy priorities are reflected not only in the bicycle industry, as they are equally visible in other businesses such as the automotive industry, the electrical components, energy production, or the pharmaceutical sector. The bicycle industry is also ahead of the curve on these and other issues, which is why we have the largest bicycle assembly plant in Europe. We also have the largest wheel manufacturer in Europe, and we have installed the world's first automated to produce aluminium bicycle frame production plant. This is a sector with a long tradition in our country, which comprises about 50 companies from different fields throughout several different regions. I think we can agree that this is already quite a record. We hope that it can be further enriched by the work that is taking place in the Portugal presidency of the European Union Council and with the work of the European Commission itself. We have begun this presidency with the motto, time to deliver, fair, green, and digital recovery, and with three major priorities for the EU at heart. First, promoting a recovery leveraged by the climate and digital transitions. Second, implementing the European Pillar of Social Rights of the European Union. And third, to strengthen Europe's autonomy while remaining open to the world, taking a leading role in climate action and promoting a digital transformation at the service of the people. With this rotating presidency, Portugal has sought to contribute, in particular, to the new European industrial policy. There is no doubt about the need to improve the energy efficiency of industrial processes as they are still a major source of greenhouse gas emissions. An ambitious Green Deal will help countries and companies in the EU to raise their own standards and apply regulation effectively to influence production and investment patterns globally while also empowering. Other solid foundations that should guide this path are decarbonization and the collaborative dynamic that enables knowledge transfer so that Europe can add value to its products and consolidate its position in the globalized market. With these objectives in mind, the Portuguese government has prepared the Recovery and Resilience Plan. We were the first country across the European Union to deliver it to the European Commission, which offers the opportunity to accelerate the ongoing transformation in our economic structure, greater investment in innovation, orientation towards foreign markets, and productivity growth. In our mobilizing agendas, we have included in this plan green agendas with many opportunities to strengthen pacts with the private sector through various investment intentions, such as electric batteries value chain and sustainable mobility, the sea economy, which is very important to Portugal and for Europe, of course, and also circular economy and new packaging materials, as well as carbon capture, for instance. It is at this summit that the word decarbonization takes on particular relevance, as around 30% of the carbon emissions we still produce come from transport. The goalpost has moved closer in recent days as all European institutions have agreed to reduce carbon emissions by 55% by 2030 compared to 1990. Such targets can only be met if these means of transport are replaced by others. Bicycles and other means of soft mobility are essential for achieving this goal. In terms of sustainability, the EU has adopted a new circular economy action plan, which sets out the guidelines for the transition to an economy that promotes the efficient and productive use of resources. We ourselves in Portugal have adopted several public policy instruments aimed at achieving sustainability. Portugal was indeed the first country in the world to present a roadmap towards carbon neutrality by 2050. Summarily, our country and our union are heavily invested in successfully managing both the digital and the green transition, the cyclical transition. Therefore, these instruments reflect the only commitment I can allow myself to leave with you, to implement a sustainability policy that is effective, responsible, inclusive, and transparent at all levels, to promote the use of energy from renewable sources, and to keep the focus on sustainable cities, communities, and mobility. Ladies and gentlemen, the collective challenge we live with has revealed the fundamental principles of the dilemma we face. Humans have unlimited needs, but the planet has limited capacity to satisfy them, and there is no planet B. We will not shy away from or underestimate the possibilities that lie behind the challenge of our planet's faces. We are committed to pushing the boundaries of our economy towards a greener future. This is a challenge for us, but it is also a challenge for you. Finally, I would like to thank Cycling Industries Europe and all its partners for organizing this summit and for extending this invitation. You can count on us, you can count on the Portuguese government, and we really believe that your work is of the utmost importance for the future of our cities and the mobility of our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, João Torres. We hope the government will continue to support this success story of Portuguese bicycle industry. But the EU Commission has said it expects projects like cycling infrastructure in your national recovery plan and your climate plan. You mentioned a lot of ambitious activities and plans. But will the Portuguese presidency of the EU be setting an example to other countries in its recovery, climate, and green infrastructure plans? Very interesting question to you.
Yes, I think this question needs to be addressed from or by two different angles. On the one hand, the Recovery and Resilience Plan is a vital instrument for the transformation and the relaunching of our economy. And I truly believe that it is essential that these plans are focused on an economic transformation based on more sustainable ways of consumption and production, which of course will impact also in a very positive way this specific field, this sector, the bicycle sector. But I think that we also must have in consideration that there are other financial instruments. For instance, if you come to Portugal, you can notice the huge investments that sometimes municipalities are making in cycling infrastructure. It is really impressive to understand, to see how things have changed in the last, I would say, 10, 15 years in Portugal. I hope you can soon come back to Portugal and visit Lisbon, which is at this moment facing huge investments from the city halls and also from other means of funding, namely national means of funding, to transform the city and the way people face the city and the territory itself. So it is for me very important to I would say to stress that the recovery and resilience plans must focus on the green transition, on sustainable consumption, on sustainable means of production, and so it must be a very useful plan for companies to transform its means of production. But at the same time, I think that we must also take in consideration other means for other financial instruments that exist, that will exist in the multi-annual financial framework from the European Union itself, and also national means of investment. In Portugal, we already have about 1,700 kilometers of cycling infrastructure built, and I think that we are the fourth most committed country in Europe to building new infrastructure. So it is I think that it is very important to recognize that bikes are here to stay in all their demonstrations. And as I've mentioned before, if you come to Lisbon, it is absolutely incredible, in a positive way, of course, how the investment in electric bikes has changed the mobility solutions for the people who live and work in Lisbon and also in the neighborhoods. So my final response would be, our concern should be over whether or not we are committed to this solution. And in Portugal, we are absolutely committed to this kind of very important solutions, and particularly to this, we are committed to this industry and these transformations themselves.
It's so fascinating to listen to the ambitions and development, and thank you very much, João Torres, and I'm looking forward to the positive incredible in this sense. Very nice to hear from you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are pleased to say that the EU Commission is represented today by Matthew Baldwin, who has recently been appointed leader for the EU's 100 climate neutral cities mission, one of the most exciting and challenging programs in the EU Green Deal. We also know Matthew from his role as Deputy Director of the Commission's Mobility and Transport Directorate, where he has been a consistent supporter of more sustainable urban mobility. Matthew Baldwin, the show is yours.
Tony, thank you so much for that kind introduction. It's a huge honor to be with you today. I'm really sorry I'm not, in so many ways, first Executive Vice President Timmermans. And Tony, you've explained why, but he does send his apologies. It's frustrating for him, but it's an occupational hazard in his business. And a frustration for you too, but I know that you know his huge, strong commitment to cycling. He is truly a champion of cycling here inside the Commission. And as he said in the past, it's interesting, amazing, I would say, to see how quickly cycling is advancing, including here in Brussels, across Europe, in Lisbon, right across the world, but also how much more understanding there is about the true value of what cycling and walking, by the way, can bring us, not just in terms of our mobility, but in terms of public health and air quality and road safety and quality of life. I will stop there because this is really not just, as we say in English, preaching to the converted or preaching to the choir, but preaching to those who've actually invested in the church itself. If I understand, preaching to those who are planning to reinvest in the church and extend it. In any case, Tony, this event is extremely important, I know, for the industry. It's significant, is shown by the presence of just so many industry leaders here today, particularly this year. And what a difference a year makes. If we think back to last year's summit, in the relatively early days of this terrible pandemic, if we are honest, it was not clear at that stage what would happen. It felt entirely possible that everything would go back to the old normal, right? From the position of industry, I can see the potential doubt in your minds. Was this COVID cycling moment just a blip, a temporary surge driven by people's fears of using public transport, by people looking for a safe way to exercise, just a pandemic fad? I recall also at that summit last year, listening to Kevin Main and the other industry leaders, insisting on the need for a clear vision for the industry, a plan to use this moment to step up and step forward to make sure that cycling was up front and center when we build back better. Yes, we had the pop-up bike lanes all the way from Berlin to Brussels to Bogota, but it wasn't clear at that stage that cities would make them permanent or put the money into making them permanent. So again, looking back, what you did at the time, it was absolutely crucial that the cycling industries, Europe, together with partners such as the CEF, the European Cycling Federations, and all the different cycling associations came together and pushed the Commission and the member states to think about cycling. For example, again, as you mentioned, in the newly announced Recovery and Resilience Facility. I know I irritate the hell out of you sometimes by banging on about this need for strong cross-industry collaboration, but you really delivered. And it was around then that Frans Timmermans in a press conference went out of his way to point out that cycling could and should be a beneficiary of the Resilience and Recovery Fund. 9 months on, we're eagerly awaiting the full outcome of that news. I'm not in a position to tell you what all the results will be. I'm pretty confident that sustainable urban mobility will be well served and that cycling will be well served in a number of member states. And you've carried on this pressure right across the different levels of government, across cities, across regions, across national governments as well, of course, in the EU. And just take a look at the results. The European Cyclists Federation tracker, a great instrument, shows that more than €1 billion has been spent. More than 2,500 kilometers of new bike paths announced, 1,500 kilometers already constructed. Cycling use is up 8% across the whole of Europe, up 50% in countries like Italy. Next Tuesday in Rome is going to be Bike to School Day. Brussels has seen huge and sustained increases in cycling, which is wonderful. It's changing the city day by day. Lisbon is making great progress, as we've just heard. Paris, it's just ridiculous what's happening there. This really is a once-in-a-generation change of behavior. And of course, it's happening in small and medium-sized cities as well, right across Europe. But there's one very important, rigorous study I could flag for you by the great folks over at the Mercator Research Institute. They asked specifically the question, just how much more cycling was generated by these new bike lanes? Vital for local mobility planners. The answers are amazing. New bike lanes have been cost effective. They have generated increased cycle traffic of between 11 and 48%. If we just take the public health benefits alone of these new bike lanes, that's generating more than €1 billion a year. In other words, they're paying for themselves in health benefits alone. Okay, that's all very fine, I hear you say, but what's happening in the industry? Well, I want to hear from you. Fascinating to hear from João what is happening in Portugal. But what I'm hearing is that bike sales are going through the roof. E-bike sales alone are up 40% against 2019. against 2019, and that accounts for, I think I'm right in saying, more than 5 million e-bikes sold in 2020 in the EU. I think I've counted most of those 5 million bikes as people even older, even less fit than me, ride effortlessly, irritatingly past me as I go up the steep hills of Brussels. I haven't yet given up on my steel road bike, but I will when I get to 60. So how do we assess against this very strong backdrop how the industry stands in Brussels with the institutions? You've always had your friends and supporters, but if we're honest, I think in the past, cycling was seen as a little bit fringe, a little bit cute, but not that important. Those days are over. By your numbers alone, you demand respect and a place at the table. And I think it is fair to say that you have generated new supporters, including at the political level, by your positivity, by your ambition to contribute to Europe's recovery, and of course, to the European Green Deal. All of that's great. But the time to push on, as all football managers know, is when you've had a good season, when the way ahead seems clear, when the opportunities are there. It's great that there's this demand for bikes, but everyone around here has a story about how they're waiting for their bike or a crucial part. Demand, of course, has put your supply chains under pressure. I'm not criticizing. I know you've had to scale up quickly. But please remember that linkage between providing new infrastructure and addressing sustained demand. The mini boom around the first oil shock, the mini boom in cycling around that first oil shock in 1973, it faded away in the US because they couldn't get the infrastructure built. They couldn't complete the supply chains. It was sustained in places like the Netherlands. We've got to keep up the pressure. You've got to keep up the pressure on member states and regions as they finalize their plans under the recovery facility, as the negotiations under the structural and regional funds are now entering their crucial operational programming phase. 18% of the funds, remember, are reserved for urban spending. 30% of the money is reserved for money to address climate change. Again, the signs are great. France, remember, with a significant car industry, just this last week announced a scrappage plan that offers 2,500 euros for a new bike if the car owners scrap their car, what Climate Minister Barbara Pompili called, and she's right, a cultural turning point. And the overall policy climate, pun intended, looks perfect for cycling. Cycling has found a prominent place in DG Move's sustainable and smart mobility strategy, where we target the doubling of safe bike lanes over the next decade. National climate plans are being written, as we just heard from Portugal. Member states and some former member states seem to be bidding each other higher ahead of COP26 in Glasgow. At the European level, it's now confirmed that we're going for a 55% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. We in the Commission are readying our plans and impact assessments under what we call the Fit for 55 package this summer. The Commission will not back down on the European Green Deal. As one example of that, and Tony, you kindly mentioned it, I'm very proud to be involved with this exciting new initiative to make 100 European cities climate neutral by 2030. Now, you might not make a city climate neutral just by encouraging and enabling cycling, but you sure as hell can't do it without cycling as one of the core policies. Another great policy, another great study, I want to quote to you, the EU PASTA study, shows that cycling has 85% lower life cycle emissions compared to non-cyclists. You have to be part of this. Last but not least, and I'm going to an end, Tony, please look even further ahead. I was just before coming here speaking to the digital public conference on the twin transitions, the climate and the digital revolutions. I'm very encouraged to hear that the CIE is taking the bike into a much wider range of policy areas. We need that. The more you see and the more you're visible in these initiatives, the more your credibility and your importance increases. Cycling might be the supreme analog mode, but it also has huge untapped digital potential. In intelligent transport systems, ITS, they will be an increasingly important tool in cities, including under the forthcoming urban mobility package. It's really helping my colleagues in DG Move to have the CIE bringing cycling solutions into these processes for the first time. Climate neutral cities will literally need to get smarter about urban freight and service vehicles. The growth figures for cargo bikes, they're great, but we need much more. You've got to be in every conversation going on in Brussels about urban mobility. Remember just how much money the EU has to support growth industries, innovations and SMEs, and particularly those with an impeccable green basis like you guys that communicate and convey their greenness so vividly. Keep innovating, keep investing in small companies where the next generation of e-bikes and cargo bikes and shared bikes are coming from. Make sure we know what you can do for the future. Let me stop. It's been a great pleasure to speak to you in such positive terms, to an industry that's so close to my heart. Remember just what President Ursula von der Leyen said, the European Green Deal is Europe's new growth strategy. You personify that. I'm proud to work with you, Tony, and the other cycling associations in Brussels to put cycling right where it belongs, at the heart of our modern, sustainable European mobility policy.
Oh, thank you very much, Matthew Bohr. It's really inspiring to listen to these ambitions and really see the incredible change and transformation that we are seeing now.
It's inspiring to be with you, Tony.
And it's really, really, really fascinating to listen to you. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you very much, Matthew. Professor Manfred Fischtig is the scientific managing director of the Wuppertal Institute, which is a leading international think tank for sustainability research. Manfred has been a researcher in sustainability and energy topics for 30 years and is a respected member of many of the most respected global platforms in his field. We are pleased that he can take time from his schedule to talk about the importance of cycling in sustainability policies today, because he is really busy as a lead author of the forthcoming IPCC 6th assessment report, one of the United Nations most important documents in tackling the climate emergency. I would like to give the word to Manfred Fischtig, please.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Tony, for the kind introduction and for having the opportunity to briefly talk about greenhouse mitigation as a major driver for continuation of the already existing positive market development trends of the cycling industries, as we heard in the enthusiastic speech just a minute before. It's really a great pleasure for me to contribute to the summit today. What I'm trying to do this afternoon is to bring in the European and particularly the German perspective on that particular topic. And as you can imagine, as a scientist, I'm used to play around with slides. So please allow me to show you some slides in this presentation as well. So the next slide, please. Let me just start with some introductory remarks and with setting the scene a little bit. Next slide, please. So without any doubt, the Paris Agreement and related policy decisions at European and German level sets the scene for action. But as all of you know, climate targets have to be seen in the broader context of the Sustainable Development Goals. So cycling contributes to both areas. Cycling is, of course, a strategic pillar for climate neutral mobility approaches, and cycling industries can contribute also significantly to different relevant SDG target areas. For instance, SDG 3, good health and well-being, or SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, as we heard before. Next slide, please. So in Europe, the European Green Deal combines climate protection and sustainability in a very specific, and I would say in a perfect way. European Green Deal can be seen as an important impulse-setting momentum and as a kind of paradigm shift for economic policy within the European Union. It provides a holistic approach, really a holistic approach where greenhouse mitigation goals, ecological goals have to be taken into consideration in all policy and in all economic areas. And in that context, cycling industries really provide a perfect match between ecology and green economy. And they are already doing so, as we can see with the booming cycling industry contributing very much to the green recovery. Next slide, please. Let us have a closer look on the economic dimension of the cycling industries. So what we see today is that product and service innovations are currently a major driver for positive market developments of the cycling industries. In addition to that, already now greenhouse gas mitigation goals, environmental and health aspects push the market forward substantially, but they will even play a more bigger role in the future. Next slide, please. So with the next table on the slide, I do not want to present too many numbers, but would like to give you at least an impression about the booming market highlighting situation in Germany, which was analyzed by my institute in a recently published study. So first of all, I can say that in 2018, 2 years ago, cycling industry achieved a turnover of almost 40 billion euros in Germany, covering different areas, manufacturing, trade, services, cycling tourism, and others. And that marks a plus of 55% within only 5 years. So really a very dynamic market. More than 280,000 jobs are associated with the cycling industries. Quite an important and quite an impressive number for a country like Germany. That's a plus of 20% in comparison to 5 years before. What have been main reasons for the current growth? Of course, product innovations like the market deployment and market penetration of e-bikes, the introduction of specific policies like tax benefits for company bicycles, the booming cycling tourism, and of course, a general economic boom in this period before the COVID-19 pandemic took over. But we will see in the future additional reasons for further growth. Because I already mentioned, we have on the table stronger greenhouse gas mitigation goals. And as was already mentioned, that COVID-19 impacts will show significant increase in the cycling industries as well. Next slide, please. So particular dynamic and booming markets are courier, express, and parcel services in Germany. So the dominating factor is the B2C business, responsible for roughly 2/3 of deliveries in Germany and comprising already more than 3 billion parcel deliveries per annum. That's an incredible number, and that market was created only in a very small number of years. Besides the economic factor, besides the economic aspect of bicycles, bicycle parcel services help to solve severe problems in our cities, be it the air quality issues or be it the congestion issues. So it's a kind of win-win constellation. So we have a market growth, we have new jobs, we have income, and we can solve or at least contribute to severe problems in our cities. Next slide, please. So based on these trends and further supporting factors, I'm quite sure that we can say that the bike sector, the cycling sector, is a place where we'll see further growth in the future. Next slide, please. So let me continue. Let me close my short presentation with reflecting the ecological dimension of cycling. Without any doubt, sustainable mobility have to contribute to a greenhouse gas neutrality strategy. And in that context, of course, cycling can and has to play an important role in the future. Let's focus again on the case study of Germany. Next slide, please. Let me give you with the next slide a little bit of background of the transport sector and its contribution to greenhouse gas emissions in Germany. What you see in the slide here is that the transport sector contributes to approximately 20% to greenhouse gas emissions in Germany, here focused on the year 2019. In contrast to all other sectors, the absolute emissions in the transport sectors have been nearly constant for a 30 years period. And that means that we have to stop, that we have to break the trends over the last 3 decades, and we have to come to a situation where we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide, please. A recently published study for Germany, where my institute has been participating, made crystal clear what has to be done to become climate neutral in general and what has to be done particularly in the transport sector. So the aim of the study was to specify, or let's say, to show a transformation pathway towards a climate neutral society, taking cost efficiency, social acceptance, and security of energy supply into consideration. The underlying targets, the underlying assumptions for the study have been to show a way for a net zero greenhouse gas emission situation in 2050 and to show a way how greenhouse gas emissions can reduce by 65% until 2030. Here we reflected already the high ambition at the EU level that we anticipated that Germany will have to improve and have to increase the current target for 2030 from 55% to most likely 65%. So I do not want to go to any kind of details, but let me just show two slides from the study. Next slide, please. For the transport sector, as for other sectors, it came out that there's a clear need for a mix of options. And without any surprise for you, I think that three major strategy elements are particularly important for the transport sector. It's of course a change of modal split. For instance, more railway transportation of goods. It's of course a change in the mobility behavior. That belongs, of course, to more shift to public transport, to cycling, and to walking. And last but not least, we need a technology change. We need more electric vehicles, for instance. So it's definitely more needed, but it's definitely more needed than only changing the propulsion system, which seems to be very often the core of the public and political debate and is dominating the discussion in many, many countries. Let me close with just give you one glimpse of the study with regard to the cycling sector. Last slide, please. With regard to the cycling sector, the main result of the study can be summarized in the following way: that the share of bicycles in modal split has to be doubled, independent on the type of space, be it big cities, be it smaller cities, or be it even rural areas. So there is a need for at least a doubling of the share of bicycles in all areas in Germany, but I think that's true for all European countries. And that, of course, requires substantial investments for the creation of attractive infrastructures for people using bicycles, or for people who want to walk through the cities. So, but at the end, I have to say that cycling is a very important option for greenhouse gas mitigation. And that means, as a result of the study, very well underlines my thesis that greenhouse gas mitigation needs have the potential and will further push market growth of the cycling market. Having said that, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Manfred Fischig. Very fascinating to listen to this research insight, very important. And I am pleased to move on now to our next keynote speaker, Kevin Main. And I have, thanks to Kevin, actually been introduced in the advocacy and lobby world. And for me, it has been really important to understand and learn about the real value for advocacy and lobbying. And I'm proud to see, Kevin, that you took an active role the last year, and especially when we had this uncertainty, you activated our expert groups and you secured that our work continue, and you built the staff, the CIE organization, and continue to be present with our expert groups, having dialogue with the European Commission and actually making a difference. And I'm very proud to see that work, Kevin, and together we are making the industry relevant. Kevin, the show is yours now.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you for that warm introduction. And I thank you again to all the colleagues that have joined us today. This is a great turnout for what is a really kind of important time for us as an industry and for the whole of cycling, that as Matthew Baldwin tells us, we kind of cement the differences that we have made going forward. You're going to hear from 9 company leaders in the next part of it. So I'm not going to tell you what bicycle companies do. What I want to highlight is what our collective action is, what our collective initiatives can do, and what it is we can contribute to this recovery as a collective. And thank you to Matthew, who's run through, I think, many of the kind of stats and indicators. And that's one thing we can do. We must supply the Commission, officials, member states, governments with figures, trends, analysis that they can use. And thanks to our colleagues on our market intelligence expert group, where we can bring this together with our partners. And one thing I can give you right now is our latest breaking news, as yet unpublished. But our colleagues from Sports Management Services, our market research member, have rushed me over the results from our latest business impact survey, which only closed on Tuesday. And if we're talking about green recovery, and you want something here that you can build on, let's tell it now. As of now, more than half our members are already at a higher staffing level than they were in 2019. But most importantly, 95% of cycling industry companies are telling us they're going to take on more staff in the next 2 years. There are very, very few companies in the mobility and leisure sector that have got their recovery happening today. It's actually on our doorsteps that there is a cycling jobs growth, which Europe desperately needs. And we believe that's the start. We don't believe that's the end. So that's my key kind of story for this process. But let's just reflect a moment for our role, as Tony says, in the last 12 months. And for many, it has been points where it's a point of survival, and we have to help through that curve on survival for bicycle companies, but through the preparatory phase. And I just want to think about what we happened in that preparatory phase, where we said collectively to the whole movement, advocacy organizations, industry people, and it starts at the grassroots. It's the bike shop that stayed open, repairing people's bikes when they wanted to ride in lockdown. And the times when bike sharing was believed to be the only safe mode of public transport on the streets. And, that the cargo bikes were delivering drugs and services to people in their homes who were locked up and isolated. And many of them were doing this at a loss. Many of them were doing it as volunteers. They're doing it because they believed it was the right thing to do for their communities. But it was equally so if you're the first mayor in Europe to open a pop-up bike lane, you could easily be portrayed as some kind of mad hippie. So we equally had to take that mayor's story and the announcement by the German health minister that he thought people should ride bikes rather than take public transport. And we build on it, and we build the story, and we take that out there to the point that there's a trajectory where that story does arrive on commissioners' desks, on Executive Vice President Franz Timmermans' desk. And believe me, behind the scenes, those people challenged us and said, is this true? Is this scale possible? Have you got the numbers? Can your industry deliver? If we put our names to cycling as part of this recovery and part of this process, will you deliver? And I think we've gone into this meeting today saying, yes, we can deliver. And that's really important because we've built that kind of credibility as our building block of our storytelling. Now, let's not get complacent. None of us should be. This story is uneven. Not every company has survived, and not every company is succeeding. Not every country is succeeding. And there are risks in our supply chain that this is unsustainable and needs substantive reform. We know that. We are not complacent. And even worse, we're seeing situations like in mountain biking, where as victims of our own success, land managers and local governments are actually pushing back and saying, there's too many of you. This amazing, localized, green, healthy solution, there are too many of you. And we have to be ready collectively to support every municipality and every voluntary group and every company that faces any of those kind of market challenges as a unit, as an industry, or we will not deliver our commitments to the European Commission and to governments that we are a sector that can be relied on to deliver the green recovery. And I've been in those meetings with Matthew Baldwin, where someone will say to him, yes, Matthew, we're young, but don't forget you need an electric car in every house. Or We can fix congestion. It's okay. We're going to do drones. Yes, we're in those meetings. But the difference is we're in there with your strength behind us. And for some of those spaces, the founding purpose of Cycling Industries Europe was to be in places where new technological voices, digital voices, industrial stories were needed. We have a great history for getting our regulations right. That's why we've got a booming e-bike market. But there is so many more places to be. And that's what we've had to do. And so again, we'll avoid that complacency. We'll be aware that there are competitive siren voices that can undermine our progress. But there are the things, and I don't want to necessarily repeat what Matthew's just said, because he's given us a great shopping list. But let's look at the kind of policy spaces where we need to be. We need to be saying not we're happy to see €1 billion in the recovery plans, but together with colleagues like European Cyclists Federation, we'll say, no, it's 10 billion. Because in 5-6 years' time, when regional funds are being spent, when European research funds are being spent, when growth plans are being put in place, climate plans are in place, there is more. There will be fiscal incentives. They should be a minimum of 500 million a year being spent on supporting fiscal and tax breaks for bikes. That just makes us 10% of what's going into company cars. But our product is so good that we will deliver those benefits to Europe, to cities, to Matthew's Green Cities program. So that is part of a package sourced from experts, resourced on expert groups, giving our market intelligence, confident in our technologies. So I say to the European Commission officials, to the Brussels bubble family that is on this call, to even investors in the capital markets, and of course to our partners, we're not going to be part of a short-term hype. You are going to hear from leading companies that are putting their own time, money, management effort, credibility, intelligence to work for this process. And we are going to be visible in places where we've not been before. We are guilty. We stood back as a cycling industry, and perhaps we were a sport and we were limited. Some countries we had a transport ambition, but that is behind us. We are a different industry now. We are wanting to be part of this European success story. And when the European Commission says we want European champions, that means they want homegrown companies. They want great and exciting SMEs, and they want international corporations that want to invest in Europe as a champion continent. And I think we can bring that package to the table. I mean, so exciting. 2 of the top 10 winners of the European Startup Prize this year were CIE members, including the winner. And you'll hear from Adrian later on. So to close, we should be proud, and I think a bit excited about the transition we've been through, but we will not be complacent. And we, above all else, will be united, because the opportunities and some of the risks are bigger than any one company can deal with alone. So we will go together with our shared intelligence, our shared knowledge, our shared expertise. Colleagues, you can count on this industry. We bring you our solutions as part of the European Green Deal to a healthier, more sustainable continent. And we are very proud to be your partners in this mission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I am happy to see you so excited. And we have, before we go into the panel and discussion and the next phase, we actually have a poll and a question, and we will involve all the participants in this. And the poll, you can see it on the screen now. And the question is, what is the top benefit cycling brings to Europe? You can make a choice: new green job and growth, European industrial leadership and innovation, reduce CO2 emissions and clean air, improve public health, or less congestion leading to green livable cities. So the first question, you are supposed to vote in the first question, and please, we are waiting and we are curious to see the result. And when I look at the answer, I think cycling can do a lot of things of this actually. But what is the top benefit cycling brings to Europe is the question. And you are welcome to give your vote, and we will see the results soon. So it's good that all of you can think. And what does it show? Well, there is for sure in all areas cycling can bring a lot of benefit, but it seems like the top leading answer is less congestion leading to green livable cities. And now when we are coming closer to 4 o'clock, now it's time to start our first panel. And it's my pleasure to introduce Saskia Kluit, Dutch Senator for Green Party and President of Dutch Public Transport Passenger Federation, Rover. Saskia is the former CEO of Dutch Cyclist Union, Fietsbond, and former president of the Dutch Cycling Embassy. You are welcome to lead the next phase of this event.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. Nice to see you again. We have about half an hour, so I don't think I need much more introduction than what you have heard. So I will quickly proceed to the next person. When I'm looking down, I'm always irritated, but when I see somebody do it, but it's very difficult to remember everything by heart. So excuse him before that. First of all, I want to introduce Tony Anbeek. He's from the Axel Group, the European largest cycling factory producer in Europe, and very well known in the whole of Europe, but large parts of the world, but by Highbike, Batavus, Babu bikes. So very broad spectrum of types of bicycles, very interesting for clean urban mobility and sports. Then of course, Tony is there. You have already met him the whole afternoon. And then Erdem Overtjeek, I hope I pronounce your name correctly, but please tell me if I'm not. And from Donkey Republic, the new branch in cycling with bike sharing and smart digital technologies. He's present already in 60 cities, and he also chairs the CIE's bike sharing export group, which is one of the newest parts of the CIE and has a unique site in the strategic digital parts of shared cycling. And then Erwin Wouts from Decathlon. Decathlon is one of the biggest bike sellers in the world, and Erwin has been an engineer, a technical guy, and an innovator, and also is the one who both combined bicycle sports and urban mobility in his cart, which is very interesting combination, and represents shops and branches in 57 countries. So that is a lot. Ton, I would like to start with you, if that's okay. And
yeah, sure.
My question for you would be, you are one of the leading bicycle companies in Europe, the biggest even, and you have a very diverse, I meant actually, because I see Tony, but my question was for Ton. So I don't know if everybody is seeing Ton Anbeek. Otherwise, I'll go to Tony.
I'm there. I can see myself.
Okay. Now I can see yourself too. Yeah. Welcome, Ton. Very happy to see you. Recently, I read your annual report, which is very impressive on sustainability. So congratulations for me on that.
Thank you.
But my question for you is, you have a very broad view of the bicycle industry. You have lots of different bikes. You operate on different markets. What is your view on the state of cycling industries in Europe after the COVID pandemic?
Thank you, Saskia. Answering your question, the state of the cycling industry looks from our perspective very bright, with forecasts of the bicycle market growing from 20 to 30 million bikes from last year, 2020 to 2030. And e-bikes will even grow with an average growth rate annually of 15% to 18 million e-bikes in 2030, which was last year, as we heard before, only 5 million. And this is only possible because the bike, because of COVID and EU Green Deal, obviously, has definitively come on the agenda of local, regional, national, and EU governments. And the bike is perceived as a great solution to many city and societal problems like pollution, congestion, lack of physical exercise, even obesity in the UK, and a great solution to mental and physical wellness. And people that cycle have, for example, 45% less chance of developing heart diseases and cancer, which is just unbelievable. And against this background, the three main bicycle market growth drivers are electrification, as we've seen it unfold in the past few years, investments in cycling infrastructure to enabling cycling safely across Europe, and investments in subsidies or fiscal stimulation to make buying a bike more affordable and attractive for everyone.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I want to follow with Tony. Tony, you are president of the CIE, so you have a bit different view maybe, but you're also active, of course, in Cycling Europe. So I'm curious about the situation there. And how do you see the industry today, the state of the industry?
No, I think it's very, very fascinating. And what is different now is the level of conversation we are having and the attractiveness of our industries and consumers to and to politicians. Through CIE, what I have seen, I'm having meetings with EU commissioners and their staff in the way we have never had before. My team in CIE is having discussion with governments and cities and regions all over Europe. And because European Commission want to know, what should we do to grow cycling? And we often repeat, well, one of the key things for sure to do is to invest more and more in infrastructure and learn more and more about the real flow from a cyclist perspective. In Cycle Europe, we are investing in our production. We are investing in product development and innovation. With the growth of the e-bike market, we see now that we are really taking the lead in the sustainable mobility. What is fascinating for me is that now we are taking, when the e-bike market is becoming so big, we are now investing and can actually invest in technology and innovation. And therefore we are investing in smart connected e-bikes. We have the privilege to have secured a partnership with very innovative partners, and we are securing safety and security for our consumers. With this technology, we see that we can actually enable a platform of new mobility services that we have never provided before. The smart e-bike is actually, I think, the future of mobility. And it will show that the cycling industry will be the leading sector for innovation, and we will even be able to be part of the intelligent transport system and the future of smart cities. So it's very, very interesting what we are doing at the moment and what we can do. Very interesting, Saskia.
Yeah, it sounds really, really great. I'm so happy to hear your words because it's been my belief that this is what cycling brings to the world. And now we make it connected. It's even the opportunities open up and our horizon broadens so much. So I'm very happy Adam is here from a sunny part of the world.
Hi. Yes, good afternoon.
So I am very curious about what's happening on your part of the world with bike sharing and the systems and the cooperation with local municipalities that you have. So could you give me a view on what's happening in your sector? And before you answer, I would like to ask everybody to use the Q&A box to give questions to the CEO panel, because we will be able to ask them later on. So Adam.
Yes, Saskia, don't be misled by my Turkish name. I am actually originally a Turkish citizen, but now also a Danish citizen and sitting here in Copenhagen, and it's a sunny day, thankfully. So I both have the CEO of Donkey Republic hat. We're a 6-year-old bike sharing service in 60 European cities. and just announced that actually we'll be listing in stock market here in Copenhagen very soon. But I also am chairing the bike sharing group at CIE. I think the last year has been relatively difficult for bike sharing industry because unlike the retail bikes, bike sharing is primarily a service for last mile for commuters, but also great for visitors. It's a part of public transport, often used in extension and combination with rail transport, which is so important when we want the cars to be replaced by rail transport. But of course, at times when public transport was in decline, and even in many cities, bikes, because they are shared, were seen potential dangers for COVID, were actually also somewhat a target from some of the cities. But thankfully, the good news is that we're almost on the other side of COVID, and with the understanding that the need to replace cars with bikes in the cities not only building the bike infrastructure, but they also are reinstituting bike sharing services across cities with stronger budget, with more thorough commitment than before. And it's not a luxury anymore to have a bike share, it's a requirement because it's an essential part of public transport. So we see also smaller and medium-sized cities across Europe investing into bike sharing. Part of the reason for that is the National Recovery and Resilience Plan that the EU has thankfully has pushed forward, which clearly incentivizes or asks nation states to look into green jobs and digital solutions, which bike sharing tick marks both. Also, I have to mention that that we have the added benefit, in addition to general ownership of bikes. For public authorities, it's important to know that every euro they spend on subsidizing is turned into public benefit. And with bike sharing, we're able to guarantee by subsidizing trips that actually certain areas and certain times that we are replacing car trips with bike trips. So we are a very efficient way of public financing this transition from cars to bikes.
Yes, I think it's a very strong story, and the relation between bike sharing and public transport, I mean, that relates so much to my heart. So, and also thinking in hindsight for putting one of Donkey Republic's bikes in front of my office at Fietsesbond, because that was really cool. It had a name and everything.
Perfect.
We're going to go on with Erwin from Decathlon, a different branch in the bicycle industry, and in the Dutch context, actually quite new, because here we have regular urban biking as the norm. As sports biking, we also do, but it's used to be smaller. It's growing. And for you, I have the question. You are a world-leading company, so you are working on a different scale than we all do. And you are identifying that cycling and urban mobility are global growth areas. And Decathlon is increasingly using its voice to support cycling as an activity or as a transport. Can you tell a little bit what's behind this way of thinking?
Yes, thank you, Sister. Thank you very much. Thank you for your question. First of all, I want to highlight the fact that Decathlon is doing well. Even 2020 has been really difficult because for some months, for a few months, we closed all our stores. So 1,700 stores closed altogether. It's quite hard to manage. But at the end, the resilience was quite good. And we took advantage to strengthen some areas such as the e-business, which growing up very quickly. We doubled the share, and we had a real good outputs on fitness product, fitness at home, but also on bicycles, and obviously on bicycle. This shows in our numbers. At the end of 20, we were minus 10% on turnover, so it was quite hard. But the bikes, they match the year 19. With 5.2 bikes worldwide and 3.6 million bikes in Europe. And it fits our wider strategies, because Decathlon is not just about sports. Our scope is physical activity, with all the benefits that brings to society in terms of physical and mental health. Everyday cycling is one of the easier ways we can get the whole of Europe physically active. So Decathlon wants to support government cities to set up infrastructure to allow more and more users in Europe to practice bicycle in a safe way through bikes, lanes, parking, and so on. Obviously, it will be better for everyone. It will be better for Decathlon.
Sorry, I was unmuted. Thank you, Adrian. Time will tell how the future will look. Ton, I would like to come back to you. As I said, I read your annual report, and it's very, very cool in what you all do on sustainability goals. You have really put that, up to detail, and you have focalized goals for yourself in a very broad respect. But one of them was around commitments to advocacy groups. You spent about $1 million last year, I think. Could you tell a little bit more on that?
Yes, sure. Axel is convinced that its bicycle can help the world move forward. And cycling promotes a healthy lifestyle and a fit body. And it was even more visible in 2020 when many people around the world chose cycling as a responsible travel alternative in comparison to cars and public transport, and as a healthy means of transport for leisure and sports activities. And with the lowest environmental impact per kilometer, the bicycle is an outstanding green alternative to the car, scooter, or public transport. And with better infrastructure and more subsidies, more people are able to cycle safely, and even more people want to cycle more frequently. And we love to support that by sponsoring advocacy organizations in the local, regional, national, but also at an EU level.
And do you see results from that?
Yes, we do. We do. And, we see actually a lot of good results coming in via the European Cycling Federation, which is obviously being also supported from an advocate from a financial point of view by Cycling Industry Europe, but that is really generating great results, and we're doing that at local levels and regional levels as well.
Yeah, I think it's really, really great that you do that, because it's the infrastructure, it's the good bike, and then it's the ability to ride a bike, and those three things make that people want to bike more. Tony,
yes.
coming back to you. You come from Sweden, a country where the
Yes.
car lobby has been very powerful industrial voice, and it has been for a long time. As an industrial guy, do you see any change in the status where you get treated, or the cycling world gets treated in the industry in Sweden?
Very interesting question, Sashka, and I can assure you that in many countries, the car industry have been seen as the national flag, but what is interesting to see now, it's changed, and the society is changing. And when there are industrial events today, I am actually also invited, together with the car industry, together with the truck industry, being there to talk about mobility and what we can do from a cycling perspective. Because the car and the automotive industry needs us now. And I think it's fascinating. Everything is changing, and it has become even more obvious. And that is also one of the reasons that we are, and one of the focus we have had with our advocacy, to really actively working on being present together with the car and truck industry. But it's very clear, you can also say that we are now meeting and having more meetings with governments, and our message is that cycling is the green mobility. Cycling is actually adding jobs and production. And we also see now, especially with the e-bike, that we are investing in new product development. And there's been a lot of talk about e-cars, but now we start to see the truth, because in one e-car there are 5 e-bikes, so it's happening, and the movement is there. And Matthew Baldwin, he mentioned before that was unthinkable maybe only 1 year ago about the car scrappage program that we have, that was launched last week in France. That was unthinkable before. So it's amazing to be part of it. It's changing and things are really happening, and we are very proud to be part of that change.
Yeah, I think you should be proud, because I of course always thought that cycling was more fancy than riding a car, but now more and more people see it, and they also start thinking, why move like 1,500 kilo in car if you can do it by bike? And that's way more green. Adam, but there's a greener way, and that is not owning a bike and sharing a bike. Your working group was the first one of the expert groups within CIE. You have been working for 2 years now, I believe, and as an industry collaboration. And how has that been benefiting Donkey Republic, do you think?
Donkey Republic and other companies, I think, are benefiting greatly. We are a couple dozen companies, and there's, of course, a lot happening in that part of the industry. There's a lot of new business models tried out, and venture capital-backed companies and cities contracting and so on. But some points that come across very strong. Why bike sharing is great. We need to make that point clear to cities and authorities. And we've been working on different impacts and voicing that, making common position papers, so that cities understand that the money they spend on bike sharing is really coming back to their pockets. I'm really glad to hear Matthew's comments earlier from EU, and Manfred also with his research. We've been calculating that together with Dresden University and using Eurostat, COWI, and ITF studies, that a single bike trip has at least €3 social benefit. Most of it coming from health benefits, which also others mentioned, but also congestion, space, and also CO2 emission reductions. And a bike share trip is sold at around €1. So and that's with no subsidies. That's what we are offering to our riders directly. So you can see that we're generating €3 of impact for €1. And if we can make that point clear enough to our cities, actually we can offer bike sharing for free, because society will gain €2 still from making it free for everyone. And then how to do it, that's the important part. So we explain why to do it, then we try to explain how to do it. And we have to really make it easy for an authority, a small city, bureaucrats and so on, to really easily contract a bike sharing company or companies to cater the service in an easy way. And then another area is really shaping regulation and standards. Which is, I think Tony mentioned, integrated part of public transport. This is what we are and need to get better at. And that's where you have mobility as a service becoming really an area for regulation. We have to be really focused on that as an industry and also as regulators, because there's a lot of business to be made. That's why large players, utility players, also ride-hailing companies, Uber and so on are looking very much into that space. And for example, we recently made a common position with regards to Google Maps, who are only integrating one bike sharing service in Europe so far. And thankfully, we have agreed with them after a group effort that now our group companies are also going to be presented in Google Maps in the same way as the one company that they have been showing there. So we can do a lot, both also in terms of regulation and standards.
I think it's a cool example what you did with Google, work together and get more.
It's not live yet, so I have my fingers crossed, but should be soon.
All right, well, there's only 380 people who heard it, but everyone will be silent, I will say. Then Erwin, I come back to you. Decathlon is a major investor in EU-based production, which is also really cool, because bring it on home to Europe and bring the work back to Europe. Spreading growth. You are a key customer of some of the largest factory investments in countries like Romania and Portugal and Poland. Is this focus of Europe going to continue, and can we expect more, or is it just a one-term thing? How do you look at that?
Yes, this is a very important fact, and you can expect more for sure, surely. We have been developing since for many years an industrial policy with a key fundamental principle, which is to ensure bike production local to each trading region. And Europe is the main region actually. This is the case for Europe, and we develop indeed partners with Portugal, Italy, Romania, and soon in Poland. And this year we will produce about 4.1 million bikes in Europe, for Europe. But to produce these bikes, we need more and more components. And we have projects called the Bike Valley to attract some suppliers to invest in Europe, and mostly close to our big pole we are developing in Romania and Poland. What that means for us is that some figures, our investment are nearly 200 million euros over 4 past years in Europe manufacturing. People working for that great bike ecosystem reach 4,800 people and should reach 5,000 people within 2 years. So we are hiring a lot for example, for 2 new big factories that we want to set in the eastern parts of Europe. We continue to invest in innovation, in R&D. We work with European startup, for example, in e-bike solutions. We develop our networks also in association and federation at 3 levels: national level, customs zone level, and also worldwide level with a WFGSGI, World Federation of Sporting Goods Industry. And all of this, of course, we want to work with the EU, Europe, because we should get some support. We want to support, and we want to be supporting this transition, support the green transformation, and supporting the development of circular economy system with recycling facilities or battery and so on, for example. We want to support also industrial investment and a way to attract foreign investors to join Europe countries with key process mastery to our Bike Valley project. And finally, that will develop green jobs and shorten lead times. That's very good for supply, but not only, because it will be much better for Europe's sovereignty also. And we want you to act on all of this point.
I think it's a very, very impressive story and numbers. And I really hope you would put the word out beyond this group of cycling enthusiasts, because it's really important that our economic guys, I'm in the Economic Commission in my country, it's very important that you bring this message broader. We go to the questions of the Q&A board. There's one interesting question. We have been looking at the positive sides, but of course we have all heard about the shortage in components. And the question is, will the shortage of components and lead time of 1 to 2 years limit the growth of bicycle sales in Europe? Please, who can give me the happy answer to that? If you raise your hand, if you have an opinion about that, please tell me, show me, then I will give you the floor.
Can you repeat the question again, Saskia? Can you repeat?
Well, will the shortage in components limit the possibility to grow the sales in Europe? That is the question. And the question is from Cheng Yong Zhu. I hope I pronounce it right. Yeah, Tony.
Yeah, I think it's at the moment, we have a kind of, you can say, supply chain crisis, and short term, it has been many challenges because of the pandemic effect and the cycling boom in combination. But what I see is happening actually, short term, we have challenges for sure, but on the long term, what is happening is a little bit what we are doing ourselves. We are bringing more production to Europe. Bringing more production to Europe, we are adding value. We are doing things we never produced before in Europe, and we are changing. And we now see a general interest from companies to start to invest much more locally. So on the long term, we will be able to adjust with more added value, I think, in Europe. But short term, we have for sure challenges that we could have probably sold more with short term, but on the long term, we will build more added value in Europe, and it's very fascinating to see.
Build back better, like they say, right?
Yes.
Ton, do you also have or Aaron? I see you.
I fully agree with Tony. On the short term, last year when we closed Europe in a few weeks, I think nobody could imagine what would be the situation a bit later. We all hoped that it would be better, but it was impossible to forecast anything. So we stopped a lot of things, and these earthquakes on supply caused a lot of trouble for this year and for next year. But on the long term, and now I think everybody in the bike industry is much more confident to see that the bikes is a part of the solution.
All right.
And could be a part of the solution, and the perspective are much better. But industrially, it needs a lot of acting, and I think acting all together for Europe is a very good thing.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
I'm going to ask 2 questions and ask you to ask shortly because we only have a couple of minutes left. How do you look at your competition in the micro-mobility? How is that impacting the way we move around in our cities? Do you see it as a competing, or do you see it as something that is bringing strength to the system? So it's not bike sharing necessarily, but the e-mopeds and all that. Real micro mobility. Who has an opinion on that?
I can go first.
Yeah, Adam.
I think it's good that we are providing different ways and for different groups to leave the car behind. So there are elderly or disabled persons who, for one reason or the other, cannot or choose not to be active. But the biggest gain to society from micromobility is actually with bikes, because of the healthy or the active mobility part. And potentially due to that, there's been many bike sharing contracts that cities have paid for, public has paid for, just like they pay for buses, trains, metro, and so on. The bike sharing is accepted as part of public transport already for a couple of decades. That is not the situation with other micromobility vehicles. And there's probably a good reason for that. Again, the health benefit is one large reason, and time will show if there's any reason to really publicly finance any of the other vehicle modes. But overall, I think it's a good thing that we have other modes, and typically we're not exactly sharing the same customer groups. People who like to use bikes have more consciences about their health and want to stay active.
Okay, so it's more, it's strengthening, it's not necessarily competing. The last question, what measures are in place to transfer frame production, and in particular the aluminium production, from China to Europe? Portugal and Poland have already started, but we need much more. Is there a viable roadmap? And who can answer that question in 30 seconds? That would be my question. Oh, Tony again, yes?
Yeah, I think Ton could have answered also, but because what we see, we are in the same situation, Decathlon, Axel, Cycle Europe. And I think what we see now in the initiative we already see in Portugal is a good example. And I think it will come now. To start and do this, it takes time, and it has taken years, and they are doing an excellent work in Portugal. But now you will see that there are more and more investments in eastern parts of Europe with also frame production coming. And I think we will see also bicycle, and you will see engines, electrical engines, and more components that will be produced.
All right, so we need thank you, Tony. Yeah,
but we have to have the patient that
okay
invest.
I don't know about you, but I am not a patient person, so I hope we can bring it forward in time. I want to thank you very much for bringing forth your opinion about everything that's going on in the industries. Your companies are really cool, really growing, and I hope to see a lot more of all of you. And of all the others who are in the participants list showing. I want to give the word to either Tony or to Monica Settler, who is the next presenter. Do I bring the word to you, Tony?
I think you should bring the word to Monica.
Monica. Then I want to say, well, Monica was the first woman who ran the Vuelta, the very cool Spanish bike race, and she finished before any guy could finish the finish line. And I think that should happen with women in the industry too. So Monica, the floor is yours, and thank you all.
Many thanks, Saskia, for the introduction. The next panel will highlight the leading role of cycling industries in Europe's green recovery, thanks to the growth and development of innovative products, digital tools, and business services. SMEs, innovators, and entrepreneurs are vital to the growth of any business sector to provide a diverse ecosystem with new ideas and energy. From bike sharing to smart cycling, from cargo bikes to sustainability. These panelists will present the latest innovations and products that are characterizing the cycling industry and are changing urban transport. Just a reminder, please use the Q&A box for questions while the chat box keeps going on for interactive conversations. So I would like to introduce you to our first panelist, Adrian Comory, who is the CEO and founder of Pony. Pony is a shared bike operator with a unique participative model. They operate in 8 cities in 8 countries. Pony is the winner of the prestigious European Startup Prize for Mobility this year, a prize awarded by the European Parliament to the most promising mobility startup in Europe. Let's hear from Adrian. The floor is yours.
Hi, hello everyone. I don't know if, very pleased to meet you. Thank you, Monica, for this very nice introduction. So indeed, I'm the founder of Pony. So what is Pony? I have a slide actually on this. So slide, please. So Pony is a bike share operator. Well, we have a unique business model that's called Adopt a Pony. So what is it? Basically, the bikes that you see in your application and that you can rent via our application, they don't belong to us. They each belong to individuals who got them in exchange for free access to all the vehicles in the fleet, as well as 50% of the revenue generated by their vehicle. So why do we do this? We have a very deep conviction that bike sharing, because it delivers a fast and convenient, as well as a reliable mode of transport, has a key role to play in helping us move away from cars for urban transportation, and that we really need to succeed. I think this has been done and it has been explained many times before. So I think we all see why. And really, a key change is that all operators like us are facing today is making sure that users are respectful of the vehicles, and they somehow understand the scheme, they somehow relate to it, and they somehow want it to succeed, right? And with Adopt a Pony, we really create communities, local communities of owners, of promoters, that help us explain the scheme and that help everyone makes more sense of it. And so does this work? Actually, yeah, it's been quite successful so far. We have thousands of people who invested in thousands of electric vehicles in many cities across Europe. So yeah, we think it's a nice way to build a sustainable transportation in Europe.
Thank you very much, Adrian. This is a very great story. Let's move on to the next panelist, who is an expert in the field of promoting cycling digitally. Elizabeth Felberbauer works together with cities and municipalities using Bike Citizens' innovative app and web solutions to motivate people going by bike and increasing the city's cycling share. With her long experience of digital cycling campaigns and cycling data, she and her team accompany government authorities to use the collected data to better understand the local cycling behavior and to use the gathered data for improving the cycling infrastructure. Let's welcome Elizabeth.
Hello. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Monica. Well, I think you almost answered some of the questions, like how can a young tech company like we, with a strong passion for cycling, contribute to Europe's digital agenda and to Europe's green recovery? Well, we are focusing on mobility behavior, and we want to shape mobility behavior towards cycling citizens. And therefore, we provide digital tools that make it easy accessible and make cycling easy accessible for everybody. So for us, we truly believe that the well-being of people is strongly connected to mobility and to our daily mobility. And the pandemic underlined once more the importance of our daily mobility behavior. And we, for example, learned from our ridership data from last year how mobility went down with the first lockdown. But throughout the year, the interest in cycling services like ours increased massively. And by the end of the year, it seems like cycling was the last piece of freedom left, the last piece of freedom and independence that was still there and that brought joy to the people. So we are trying to put everything in kind of cycling cycle. So it is very important to connect with the people, to connect cycling to the people and to make it easy for them to start. Throughout last year, we did work together with many cities in Germany who were looking for an immediate solution to make it easy for people to switch from public transportation to the bike. And therefore, we provided with our digital cycling app a very cycling-friendly route. So we made it easy for them to switch to the bicycle and to experience the joy of cycling, even if it's their first time. The second step will be to enhance the experience of cycling by strongly promoting it. So we're working together with cities and governments, and we're trying to set incentives. We try to give back benefits to the cyclists, to try to give back to those who contribute. And we also try to to learn from the experienced cyclists and to use their engagement and to make them co-creators and to improve the cycling situations in the cities. And by doing so, by using all those digital tools, we collect data, very visible, very valuable insights in a very playful way. And this data is very helpful in order to provide vital insights and knowledge to decision makers and to allow them to make an impact for healthy societies and communities. And not only for the decision-making process, it also gives cycling a very strong and a very visible voice because it's data-based. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Elizabeth. This has been very insightful. Now to our next panelist, Philipp Kahle, who is the founder and chief technology officer of ONO. ONO is operating in the cargo bike sector to transform urban mobility. It recently won growth funding from the European Union. Let's hear more about it from him. Philipp, please.
Hello, Monica. Thank you for that nice introduction. Hello from Berlin. Our idea is to rethink and change urban mobility in a smart way. Our vision is to make cities more livable again and to design them for people and not for traffic. One aspect of this is to replace growing goods traffic in city centers with cargo bikes. But our idea goes much further. In the future, we also want to use many different modules to transport not only goods, but also people. Yeah, you see our vehicle, our ONO pedal assist transporter here on the slide in the inner city of Berlin. It's an e-cargo bike, which can be used on the bicycle infrastructure while transporting loads up to 200 kilograms. We want to replace a van with one vehicle, and we can move slimly and quickly through the traffic. The problem of finding a parking space is also over. With 2 replaceable batteries in the ONO, you can travel up to 60 kilometers without stopping at any charging station. Our smart connecting electronics is on board, allowing comfortable and safe handling, and the weather protection also makes it comfortable for the driver all over the year. The bicycle industry in general, but also cargo bikes are booming in the moment. We can see this last year, and we see it every day in the cities. And as for the perspective of cargo bike industry, we need to move away from thinking of them as an addition to current traffic, but solutions like ONO are operating year-round in all weather conditions and can completely take over the last mile delivery in inner cities in moving goods. This can also support the climate goals of the EU, and in addition, it makes cities more livable again, as cargo bikes don't take much space on the roads, or less space, and are quiet and emission-free. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Philip, for this great story. Awesome. Our next panelist is the General Manager for EcoCounter. Enrico Dabano's career has allowed him to develop projects on bike monitoring in a variety of cities in Europe and worldwide, at any level, local, regional, and national. Over the last 3 years, Enrico covers the position of General Manager and leads a company with a strong vision of innovation and sustainable mobility. Welcome, Enrico.
Thanks, Monica, for the introduction. Yeah, that's hello to everybody. The slide on, yes, thanks. What I would like to share with you is a bit of history of EcoCounter. EcoCounter is a company with installing counters and detecting the bikes in bike paths. We have a quite old history. I feel like a little bit of dinosaur. Started in 2000s doing this. My point here is not to talk that much about EcoCounter, but more as example of the dynamism of the sector over the past 10 years and the level of scalability that the market allows in the bike business. We observe since 2000 that there is a direct relationship into the level of investments in the different countries in infrastructure and bike policy and the growth of our company. The slides show where we are today. What is interesting is, as example, is to use the past to imagine the future of what your company or other company could be in the next 10 years. I can give you some example. Until 2006, we were 5-6 start prospecting in Europe mainly. I've been once calling the cities and say, do you want to count bikes? And say, bike what? To commute? So you can imagine with such an answer, we did not start in Denmark or in the Netherlands to our business. But in 2008, we observed a big impact from the bike sharing. We live in Paris. It changed a lot of things. It shows the impulsion of public investment from 6-7 employees in a couple of years. We go up to 20. And from 2015, we conquer the world. We say 30 countries. We enter in a new era. The cities were answering, yes, I need to count bikes. I need to evaluate them because I have no idea about the volumes and I'm doing investment to develop. So in that part, again, cities and countries invest money in bike infrastructure, and our company followed the growth. We had more than 60 employees, and now you show the figure that we are more than 100. So in 90 of us working. During all this period, each time we observe, we produce an innovation according to the customer needs. The market was really responding extremely well. So also preserve the time to innovate is really always highly recommend. So nowadays, what we observe that is if in the past 10 years, has shifted from bike what to be a real now standard in transport. The story as the one of as EcoCounter will be the normal in the future. We observe as well a lot of company following the same path. And we can imagine with all this money available from innovation in our field, the technology acceleration that we are observing, this organization and also the organization of our market, of our industry that is just starting, but is already giving concrete results. I can really imagine what the next 10 years would be. We have a terrific opportunity as industry. So the message that I want like to pinpoint here is that really like industry, we need to know that we can give an impulsion to this movement, being together and collaborating. I think that if we are doing that, only the sky will be the limit for the bikes. Thanks.
That sounds great, Enrico. Thank you very much for telling your story. Last but not least, I would like to present to you Andrea Kurz, who is the member of the Jobrad Managing Board in charge of customer service, operations, and people and organization. She cycles to work all year round. Andrea, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Monica, and thanks for having the opportunity to introduce Jobrad to the audience today. And may I have the slide, please? I would like to start with Jobrad's founding impulse because when we started in 2018, we had quite an ambitious goal in Germany because we wanted to make the company bicycle in Germany as commonplace as company cars. At that time, we really needed to do some groundwork, or the founder and the very small team needed to do some groundwork in order to really create a business model. And this was only possible in a very good cooperation with the German cycling associations. And in this joint effort in 2012, we really achieved a breakthrough, because since then the German tax authorities include company bicycles in the tax code, enabling tax breaks for employees. And I think we've been hearing something about it in the meeting today anyhow. So as of today, with the current tax situation, an employee can save up to 40% in comparison to a direct purchase, especially if the person is going for a high quality, a high priced bicycle. So I will now skip a few years and look into JobRad today. So we had quite a journey. So at the moment, we have more than 30,000 employers who offer JobRad as a benefit for their employees. And especially in spring, in the current season, we daily have more than 1,000 bicycles ordered through JobRad. And this was also quite a journey for us as an employer, as a company. So at the moment, we have more than 500 people. It doesn't sound like a big figure, maybe in comparison to some numbers we've heard today, but for us, it is quite a journey, because 200 of these 500 employees have only started with JobRad last year. So we created 200 jobs last year. And I want to close with looking at the overall sector of company bicycles, because seeing the big opportunity, we are no longer the only player in the market. And we can really say that the company bicycle has established itself as a sought after benefit, kind of a trendy benefit. And you can imagine that 2020 was also a special year for us. And in total, we estimate that we have more than 500 company bicycles in Germany. And we are very happy that we can say that these are very often high quality bikes. And what the usage of this is, I don't need to reiterate, because I think we've been talking about this a lot in the session today.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Andrea. And to all the panelists for presenting your latest innovations and products that are characterizing the cycling industry and changing urban transport. We do have now time for one or two questions. One of the questions which was asked in the Q&A box was, how can you as companies contribute to the EU's green transition? Who would like to answer this?
Yeah, maybe can start, Philip from Ono. Yeah, as I told you, our goal is that one of our vehicles can replace one truck in the city. So this is our aim, and this is on what we are working with the first customers. We started serious production summer last year, and we have now a lot of customers from the last mile delivery. Like yeah, I don't tell you the names, but you maybe know what I mean. And we see that it's possible that we replace really one truck. And more than that, we can deliver more parcels with one Ono than with one normal truck. And this is due to the size, this is due to the traffic problems you have with the truck, to the parking problems you have with the truck. And in that case, we can put some effort on saving CO2 emissions or reducing CO2 emissions in whole Europe, in the cities.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Philip. Anyone else from the panel who would like to answer this question? Yeah, Andrea?
I would like to add from our perspective that we think that by giving people the opportunity to really have access to high quality cars at a very good price, and if we look at the company bicycle scheme we know that 70% of the cars of the bicycles we have in our scheme are e-bikes now. And we know that the e-bike is a really, really good possibility to change from a car journey to a bike journey. And so I think we can also contribute to achieving these goals.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yes, Elizabeth?
Well, like already mentioned, what we are doing is we try to start with mobility behavior and to make it more attractive to use the bicycle and make it more easy to do so. So this is where we start, and then the output with we can do is use all the collected data to improve the cycling situation, and so it gives back to the cyclists. So this is how we try to contribute there, by making it more accessible and setting the incentives for a step to the bicycle.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, from my perspective, it will be very short. I think the data showed in many ways how many it's really big communication tool and a big change tool as well to change the behavior. So really allow and giving this data to the city, allow them really to push this changing into the population.
Awesome. Thank you, Enrico. Paul, Adrian, would you like to also mention something? Otherwise, I would move on to the next question.
No, yeah, I can add a last element. I think most of it has been said, but another aspect that I think is interesting with cycling is that it's an industry that can be easily relocated in Europe. So I think that's also a key aspect that is important to bear in mind. Is there is an opportunity by developing cycling to create local jobs and help local economy and industrial economy thrive. And I think it's a key aspect of building sustainable Europe, is being able to do more locally and rely less on international transportation. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul, Adrian. We have a couple of minutes left, so there's one more question for you from Fabio Mazzola. Will cargo bikes/e-bikes be regulated differently from standard bicycles due to size, footprint, payload, or speed? Are there any safety issues or concerns from users, regulators, or municipalities? Who would like to take on this question?
I can try. From my perspective, I don't think that we will go through a different legislation for cargo bikes on others. I think that the more advanced countries in Netherlands and Denmark, they are not going in that way, if one take it as example. Then I think that municipality are really asking about conflicts of user. And I think that it's always a good sign, meaning that there is a lot of user there. What we can provide them is better information in order to allow them to, with the data, manage and build better infrastructure in order that we have space for all of them. And also we show that for the e-bikes, for instance, they are already limited to 26 kilometers per hour. So I don't think that from legislation point of view, there will be a switch in that way.
Great, thank you, Enrico.
I can add something if wanted. We are also working on the EU level on a standardization, not on a regulation in that phase, but on a standardization of cargo bikes. We were very active in the past in Germany in the DIN to have especially a cargo bike DIN or a norm. So for cargo bikes, a standardization for cargo bikes, and also we want to have it on a European level now. And what I see is that most of the cargo bike companies are then trying to achieve the terms and so on, or trying to achieve that norm and that that standard, even if it's not set by the government. Yeah, and I think that we are coming then to a more safety and more reliable products, and products which have a maximum size of whatever, if more of us follow the standard then.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Philip, for your insights. And unfortunately, time has run out, but I really appreciate everyone's insight on your products and innovations. I think this has been really great also to see a transition how a new cycling economy looks like in Europe. And yeah, thank you very much for letting me moderate this. And I will now turn back to the CIE president, Tony.
Oh, thank you, Monica. So interesting and inspirational to listen to all different kind of activities and movements that is really moving on and going on. And we are coming close to the final part, we have a possibility to have a second poll at the moment with a question and a quick poll. For all of you participants, before we end and close, and the question is, what needs to happen to keep cycling booming? And we are curious to see and look at the results, and there are different alternatives: a higher capacity, more sustainable European supply chain, e-bike premiums, bike sharing, the level playing field, cycling every relevant EU policy, or every EU citizen access high quality places to ride bikes. So what are the voting from our participants and all of us today? Let's see what we can receive live. I think it's a 40% vote for every EU citizen can access high quality places to ride bikes. And it's a strong message, it's a clear message. And that is also what we really believe a lot in CIE, that we need good quality infrastructure. When we feel safe and secure, we are actually taking our bikes. Very interesting, very interesting. And today I felt very inspired during this event, and I really feel now that we have a movement where cycling actually will be part of the transition from mainly car mobility to multimodal mobility. Cycling industries will become an important part in which new mobility services, especially with the new connected e-bikes, and where new services will be provided. In CIE, we can now come more together with small companies, production companies, big startups, innovative companies. Together, we will be strong. And I really feel now we have the movement to secure that we can contribute with cycling to make Europe more sustainable for the future. I would like to thank the keynote speakers for their contribution today and all participants. And I would like to thank the CIE staff for organizing this event. And I am really happy to thank also the CIE members for the engagement and the passion being part of what we are doing. And thank you for the organization of all of this Green TV. And coming to end like this and being together in 2 hours, I really felt inspired. And I realize I have to remind myself that cycling and the e-bikes is the future of mobility. And ladies and gentlemen, the future is glorious. Thank you very much. It has been so inspiring to see all of you and be together with all of you for 2 hours. And we will come back. I really look forward to that. Thank you for your participation. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.